Welcome to the Flora Sage Podcast, a place where we help you create a life you're excited about. Hello there, and welcome to another conversation that I hope you will use to create a 1-degree shift in your life. Woohoo! Today, our topic is from a longtime connection who actually commented on one of my Instagram stories when I asked everybody, what do you want to hear me talk about on the podcast? And Kelly asked the question, how do you maintain relationships in a divided world? And then she goes on to say, most social interactions seem like minefields these days, and it's been tricky maintaining my closest relationships. There doesn't seem to be any safe topics to talk about. Thank you so much for this question, Kelly. And yes, this is so true on so many levels. So years ago, there was this quote that I heard, and I tried to look it up online and I couldn't find out who actually said it. But this gentleman was quoted in saying, the demise of our society was the invention of the electric garage door opener. People stopped talking with their neighbors. So I think to really get into this topic of conversations, we need to go back in time to 1921 with the invention of the electric garage door opener. And fun fact, it was actually invented by C.G. Johnson, who released the invention to the world in 1926 in Hartford City, Indiana. Now, they didn't really gain popularity until about 1950 to the 1960s. Now, before garage door openers were invented, people would drive home, stop their car in the driveway, get out of their car, go open their garage door, get back in their car, drive in, then they'd get out and close the door and then go back inside. Now, when they were out of their car, they would see their neighbors outside and they'd be like, hey, what's up, neighbor? And they'd strike up a conversation with them. People knew their neighbors. You had your belief, your neighbor had your own set of beliefs, and when you talked with your neighbors, you could have a conversation. You could find out what they thought of the recent news stories about what was going on here, what was going on there, and they weren't afraid to have those conversations with each other and find out what other people were thinking. They had their own beliefs and they were solid and firm in those beliefs. And sometimes they were willing to change their mind based on new information that came out, And so this got me thinking about many examples when I've been walking tank. And I wanted to share a few of these stories with you. So the other day I was walking tank and there was 2 people out in their front yard and they were cutting down a tree. And they said something to each other just as I was passing by, and I agreed with what they said out loud. Now, they instantly looked at me in shock, and we ended up standing there for like 20 minutes just chit-chatting about all kinds of things. And then when I felt kind of a lull in the conversation, I'm like, well, thanks for chatting. It's been great. I'll see you later. And they said, no, thank you for stopping to talk with us. Like, nobody talks anymore. We have no idea who our neighbors are. Now, I walk my dog every single day, several times a day, and I typically change my route almost every time. However, there are, there are certain spots that I pass during each one of my walks, like every single time. And there's also certain people that I see every single day. Well, one day in particular, I was just not paying attention. I was in my own head, and Tank and I crossed the street. And the woman that was on the other side of the street, like literally on the same side as I was crossing to, she saw me coming, and so she immediately crossed to the opposite side. She has an aggressive dog, and I know this, and as I realized that she was crossing the street to get away from us, I was like, oh shit, and I blurted out, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I was not even paying attention. I never even saw you. And she's like, oh, that's okay. It's no problem. And she says, by the way, it's really nice to hear your voice after seeing you so many times. And again, we stood there across the street from each other and we chit-chatted for a few minutes. Also, a few days ago, I was again walking my dog And all of a sudden, this tiny little puffball of a dog came running up to Tank, and it had to be around like 5 pounds. Now, Tank is 30, super non-aggressive. Like, my dog will just lick you to death. I mean, he's like the least aggressive dog I've ever seen. And this little puffball of a dog and Tank started sniffing each other. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so cute. Where did you come from? Well, meanwhile, the owner is hauling ass towards the dog. And apparently he had opened his door and the dog bolted out. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, he's so cute. What's his name? And he's like, oh, it's Milo. And I'm so sorry. And he just kept saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I reassured him, I'm like, everything's okay. Like, it's nice to see your dog. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to, and again, he looked at me like I was like nuts because I was talking with him. And he even said, he's like, wow, it's really nice to have a conversation with someone. Like, people just don't talk anymore. And this really got me thinking, it's so sad that we have become so disconnected to the world around us that we just don't talk with people anymore. And yeah, during the pandemic, we were inside of our homes. We were told to social distance and stay away from people. But as people emerged from their homes, some people are just emerging. Other people really never even quarantined a whole lot because they were essential workers and they just kind of had to be out in the public. So as people emerged from their homes back into the world, it's really apparent that we have lost the art of conversation as a society. And we've lost the art of agreeing to disagree with one another respectfully. So how do we get that back? Especially with the dawn of social media. Back in the day, we didn't know how our neighbors felt about certain things. We didn't know unless we asked them. And with the dawn of social media, if we're friends with that person online, it's really easy to see what our friends and family members think about things because we look at what they post. So it's very easy to think, oh my gosh, so-and-so believes XYZ, and I believe in ABC, which is totally opposite. It's totally on the other side of the fence. So I need to make sure not to talk with them about this because otherwise this is going to start a fight or whatever. And so, we start to not even breach those topics. We start even not to even go there with people because we know how passionate they are, or we think they are based on their posts around specific topics. And so, this right there, I think, is something that puts us at a disadvantage when it comes to having conversations because we assume we know the entirety of someone's beliefs based off of just a small handful of posts or even a large handful of posts that somebody posts online. So I would encourage you to begin to think about and recognize the impact that we have on other people. Like, these short conversations were incredible. And short conversations can really warm you up to talking to others again and also allow us to practice what it feels like to talk about things publicly instead of just privately with those people that we deem safe that have the same beliefs that we do. So you can also begin to educate yourself on the topics that interests you on both sides of that topic so that you can understand the other points of view without feeling triggered. This is so important because, how often do you educate yourself? Like, if you are on the left, how often do you educate yourself on what the people on the right think? If you are on the right, how often do you educate and find out what the people on the left think? Like, actually not the big mainstream media, but actually go follow accounts that are left-centered or right-centered, or people that are just kind of in the middle, and really looked at their content and really, asked questions and got to know why they believe what they believe. And then that way you can, in the privacy of your own home, work through the things that are triggering you or the things that are possibly offending you so that you can say, wow, I'm really super triggered about this. why am I triggered about this? What's going on? And, you know, the beautiful thing about having conversations with someone when a topic comes up that, you know, you might have very differing views about it is you can go into that conversation knowing where you stand, but then also understanding where the other side is and not get triggered by it. Like I said, you know, seek first to understand. Like that as a coach is one of my main things that I do. That's like my main principle is how can I be of service? And then the second is seek first to understand. And so, you know, when you allow yourself and you have that willingness to witness the other person and what they're saying without an agenda, just to listen to them and ask them why they believe what they do, to understand, not to argue, but truly to understand, what happens is the entire dynamic of that conversation changes. It shifts into one of defensive argumentation or defensive presentation of why I believe what I believe to a more relaxed conversational space where you actually can say, oh, wow, you know, I was under the impression that this meant this. So this is really interesting. So share with me a little bit more about this particular topic or whatever, because I am right now in the education phase of learning about this particular thing, and I would love to know your point of view about it. Now, sometimes people get a little bit leery or even triggered when I suggest learning about things that are on the complete opposite side of the spectrum as what you believe. Now, this is not to try to convert you into any particular way of thinking. It's to educate you so that one, you're more solid in the beliefs that you have, but two, to understand, just to understand the viewpoint of someone that holds a different viewpoint as you. And both viewpoints are valid and valuable, okay? Now, the thing is that most people don't feel heard. This is why the personal coaching industry is over $1 billion industry. Like, yes, you heard me correctly. People just like you have collectively paid over $1 billion in the last year for personal coaching services. Simply because most of them just don't feel heard in their lives. They don't feel like they have anybody that truly listens to them and understand where they're coming from. Now, I've compiled a list of, actually 2 lists for you to get the ball rolling, to start up conversations and to start to get used to talking with people again. Now, I found this fabulous article online and I'm going to link it in the show notes. Excuse me. So, 13 ways to start up a conversation. I know many people are introverts. I myself am an outgoing introvert. So a lot of people think that introverts are shy. I am not shy, but I am an introvert. I can only people for so long, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go back into my cave and hibernate for a while. But I love a good conversation. So 13 ways to start up a conversation. Number 1, ask for information. Number 2, pay a compliment. Number 3, comment on something pleasant. Number 4, introduce yourself. Number 5, offer help. Number 6, ask for help. Number 7, mention a shared experience. Number 8, ask for an opinion. Number 9, praise the person. Number 10, show genuine interest. Number 11, ask about them. Number 12, make an observation. And number 13, and this is the old easy one that everybody knows about, comment on the weather. Now, with that said, one of the things that I have heard many, many times in coaching sessions is, how do I not get canceled or trigger someone when I'm having a conversation with them? Well, first of all, be tactful in what you say and mindful of the words that you're saying, okay? But also recognize that you're not responsible for somebody else's healing, for somebody else's growth, and for somebody else's understanding. Everyone was impacted in some way during the pandemic, and it was really hard for everybody. Nobody got out unscathed, okay? So allow yourself to do the best you can. And you can even tell people that you're having a conversation with it, wow, this is a little strange having constructive conversations with people again. I kind of like it. And that will open up even more dialogue around conversations and about what's been going on with the world. Now, if you're a little extra leery about conversations with people, steer clear of the topics that you're not willing to talk about with others, or that you feel like you still have triggers around, like vaccines or politics or religion. And if they start talking about it, just say something like, oh, I like to keep my thoughts about that private. Lord knows we all have strong opinions. Or something like, oh, yikes, let's change the subject. I've had a great day so far and I want to keep it that way. And just kind of laugh it off. But, be willing to recognize that when someone is passionately talking about what they believe, again, and I talked about this before, it might not be because they're trying to convert you to believe what they believe. Most of the time, it's just merely to be heard. So you can try to agree to disagree with them. Now, one of the go-tos that I do is if I don't want to agree with them, but I also want to validate what they're saying, I'm like, oh, interesting. Because the word interesting can mean interesting, like, wow, that's really fascinating, which I use interesting all the time. And sometimes it is to just be like, wow, that's really interesting. I want to find out more about this. Or wow, that's really interesting. Like, holy crap, I can't believe you believe that. No, I'm kidding. But interesting is a very neutral word that will keep the conversation going in a very safe way. So if you are in a conversation where you feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to say because I don't want to trigger this person, the word interesting is a good, safe word that you can use that literally has thousands of meanings under the surface. So, okay. So I've created a list of 7 things that you can do that may help you show up during a conversation with someone. Now, you can practice this in your home or in your car while you're driving places to hear yourself speak your beliefs out loud before you have a conversation, so that you can kind of build up the nerve of, okay, I'm going to talk with somebody about this topic that I'm a little nervous about talking about, okay? So again, first thing, number 1, seek first to understand. Be willing to try to understand why people believe what they do, especially if it's very different from what you believe, okay? Give yourself permission to just seek to understand. Number 2, truly listen to what the other person is saying without planning what you're going to say in response. That's a big one. Most people listen to respond. Listen to just listen and listen to understand. Now, number 3, don't take what they said personally. It is their belief after all. We're all entitled to our own opinions. So don't take anything that they say personally. Everything that I say is based on me, my beliefs, my experiences, my ideals, and where I'm going in life, just as everything that you say is based on your history, your beliefs, and all that jazz, okay? Number 4, avoid putting other people's beliefs or opinions down or try to invalidate them just because they are different than yours. Different strokes for different folks, people. Truly. If someone believes something, it's because it's valid for them, and what you believe is valid for you. So try to avoid putting other people down or invalidating what they have said. Now, number 5, if you feel triggered, stay calm and recognize that if you're triggered or offended, that means that you have work to do on this topic, not them. If you are triggered or you are offended, that means you have work to do. Okay? I know sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. Number 6, use I statements and be willing to say things like, I see where you're coming from, aka their point of view. However, my experience is very different. And then you can share your experience and be like, isn't it cool that we have such different opinions about this or such different experiences? Interesting, huh? There we go. I throw that interesting thing out there. All right, number 7, be willing to have awkward conversations. The world is so much more interesting place when we have conversations and where everyone feels heard and understood and allowed to chat openly without judgment or without repercussion. When we give ourselves permission to honor your beliefs, honor somebody else's beliefs without trying to convert them or convince them that you're wrong, I'm right, and blah, blah, blah. Let everybody have their own opinion. If everybody was the same, that would be so boring. That would be so boring. And, cultivating great conversations, yes, it can take time, but I promise with practice and time and more practice, you will all feel so much more comfortable having great conversations again. And again, be okay to agree to disagree with someone. Remember, this is one of the steps. The willingness to have those awkward conversations is one of the steps that helps you to get past a block. And this block is how I can't even have conversations with people because of all the landmines that are out there socially right now. Be willing to have awkward conversations. Be willing to recognize that if somebody gets really heated and passionate, that they probably, especially if somebody gets angry, they're probably feeling like they're not being heard. And so if you feel like somebody's getting really heated or they look like they're angry, say, okay, you sound really angry right now, so I feel like I'm not hearing you properly, or do you feel like that I'm not hearing you accurately? If so, please let's just take a beat, let's take a deep breath, let's get on the same page. We're not the enemy here. You're my friend, I love you, and I'm just here to understand your point of view. It might be different than mine, but that's okay. I love that we're so different. That's why I love you as my friend, because we do have differing opinions on things, which makes it so interesting when we come together. I just love this. And showcase that being different is perfect. And showcase and let them know that you truly want to understand and that you truly want to hear what they have to say. And yes, this might get awkward. This might get a little bit cumbersome as we navigate and as we all learn how to have conversations like we used to back in the day. I mean, like, think about our grandparents or your parents and all of the conversations that they had. I mean, I remember listening to my parents and their siblings and all that jazz talk about things, and they had vastly, wildly different points of view. And sometimes they got really super animated when they talked about it. But the cool thing is they agreed to disagree, and they were like, well, one of the conversations ended with, well, that's why you're cuckoo and I'm not, but that's okay because you're my brother and I still love you. And I was like, oh, snap. Oh, yeah, that was from one uncle to another. And I was like, oh my God, that was epic. And they hugged it out. And I was like, yes, that's how things should be. Like, is recognizing that it's okay to have those differing opinions. But again, how we get back to this as a society is just get practice. Just take the time to understand the other person. Take time to really understand what you believe and why you believe it, and then get awkward with each other. Like, have those awkward conversations, and I promise you it will get easier. Now remember, being willing to do one baby step every single day through these conversations, through your willingness, through educating yourself, is going to help you shift and create that little 1 degree of a pivot, that 1 degree of a shift that will help you create a life that you're really, truly excited about. And that's why this whole podcast is here, to help you create a life you're excited about, 1 degree, 1 tiny shift at a time. So I hope this serves you. I love you, and I will see you back here in the next episode. If you've been loving these episodes, it would mean the world to me if you would rate this podcast on iTunes. A 5-star rating is what I always aim for. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. All links mentioned are in today's show notes.